Anora won the Oscar. And as it happens every year, when the top Oscar award is announced, there are quite active discussions both in the internet and in the real life, with people discussing whether the film deserves the award or if it doesn't. And actually, this year might have seemed like no different from any other year. However, from what I observed, in most cases, people complain about the movie not deserving the award because they understood the movie. And to me, it looks like that in most cases, people expect the movie to be something complicated, something they will struggle to understand. And to me, this seems like a very interesting situation for discussing, so let's discuss it. I think what most people imagine when they hear a word film festival, like Oscar, like Cannes, like Palme d'Or, like when people hear all these words, I think what they imagine is an art house movie, something like Tarkovsky or Lawrence von Trier, something very complicated, very sublime, about very high-level concepts and presented in a very, abstract way, something discussing things like meaning of life, or something that you really need to make an effort to understand, and, you will not be able to perceive it at a first glance. You really need to get into it to understand the movie. And, the thing is that when something is hard to understand and when something is complicated, it's quite easy to call it smart and to call it for smart. And especially when there are other people discussing these things this way and telling that, oh, it's not for everyone, it's for smart people only. And there is this, it's not like you are not understanding the movie, it's just the artist's vision. And especially when the artist is having a lot of accolades and generally an acclaimed person in the industry, and all that creates an entourage of a very smart movie that is, again, not for everyone and generally an art house movie. And the thing with Anora is that Anora falls a victim to this way of thinking because, in fact, Anora, yes, it doesn't discuss like very, very high-level concepts. But despite that, I don't think that topics presented in Anora are irrelevant or like less important. The thing is that topics presented in Anora are very common. These are the things that we see every day in our real life. We see people getting laid, sex workers, people having very low salaries and living day to day. And all of that doesn't create an impression of a smart topic because, well, I guess every person understands that. But at the same time, it doesn't make it less relevant. These problems exist in the society. So Anora is a movie that presents the topics that generally will be understandable for almost any person on the planet because of the very high relevancy. And I really understand where this confusion grows from, because you expect a movie presented kinda like, I don't want to say even eye-opening experience, but an experience that will make you even more confused, that will make you think about it in a way that, maybe I can interpret it this way, or maybe another way, or maybe the author, put some other idea behind this metaphor or something like that. And it doesn't all make Anora a bad movie because it doesn't have a lot of such things. And I don't actually think that the topics, of sex and drugs are like the main topics here. And I really understand where the confusion comes from, because when you expect a movie that is very abstract, something that you will always give a second thought about some other moment that you will treat like you are interpreting the idea or a vision of the author. When you see in Anora, I don't want to say that Anora is a stupid or an empty movie, but the topics here are very easy to interpret and read. But again, it doesn't make it stupid, doesn't make it less important because you can see them every day. No, absolutely not. Intruding into the video right from the moment I'm editing it, and while rewatching the fragments that I've recorded, I realized that it all may seem like I'm trying to protect Anora and its topics and say that because of the high relevancy of the topics and because of how common they are, the movie deserves the Oscar. However, that's not the point I'm trying to make. I'm completely not defending the Anora. Rather, I'm trying to elaborate on the fact that there is this confusion that grows from the expectations that there is going to be something not really common, something not really, I don't want to say relevant, but something that people haven't seen. And this feeling that you understand what you see on the screen creates an impression of sort of like an ordinary movie
that doesn't try to, bring something new. However, these are just expectations and nothing more. Besides, I think it's just needless to say that the fact that some topic has already been brought up in the society and discussed doesn't make it unworthy to discuss. Because if you think about it, a lot of legendary books, movies, other artworks are discussing and have inside very similar topics. And somebody will say that they just repeat themselves. But let's be honest, this is never the case. An artwork, a good artwork, usually brings an artistic vision, a new approach, a new vision to the problem and to the topic. So that's why we can define it as something unique. And if we were to consider everything this way, we would find out that every single artwork, every book, every movie has a very integral part that is very similar between one another, and we would say that all of them are about one thing only. But let's face it, this is absurd to think this way, because this is never the case. And more on that in the next part of the video.
Let's take example with the Bible. A lot of artworks take inspiration from Bible and making huge references to them, being still very relevant and still important, despite the fact that Bible is 2,000 years old or something like that. In addition, there is this thing that when you have already seen something, or if you have understood some idea, this doesn't make such a strong impression on you anymore, because your mind has already processed it. So next time you will encounter it, and especially it works in art that way, it will not make such a huge impression and an eye-opening experience, because you already know that. Why would you treat it as something new, something very, very outstanding, right? And this way happens with Anora. People see things that they have already seen, problems that they have already discussed. So they're not surprised. And if you really want to know my opinion about Anora winning the Oscar, to be honest, I need to say that I don't really treat Oscar as something important, and I try not to evaluate movies because of the Oscar. And therefore, I don't really think about any movie if it deserves Oscar or not. Because for me, it's not something like a measure of a movie. I honestly treat Oscar as just some event in the cinematography industry, just highlighting rather good movies than bad movies, because, usually there are now shitty movies at the Oscar. But at the same time, I don't treat it as something that, would shape my opinion about a film. Obviously, I understand that it affects it, and I rather treat it that way, that probably I may pay attention to the movie that appears as a nominee at the Oscar. And to be honest, I would suggest you to think about movies appearing on the Oscar this way, because it's totally okay if you don't like Anora, and you don't have to like Anora and, look for reasons to like it or not like it. I would suggest you to try to understand it and perceive the way you already do. Personally, I really enjoyed watching the movie, and I think I experienced Anora the best way possible, because I was watching it in the cinema. And you probably know that in a theater, the emotions from any movie is multiplied by a scale. And, I was really enjoying it because I was laughing in the room, and the entire room was laughing with me. And it was a real roller coaster of the emotions. And I think for everyone it was like that. And I think that the movie is not just about sex, drugs, and people partying. I think the movie is about the lack of understanding, about the distance between us. And I think the theme with the different languages and with the lack of understanding between the characters is very important here. It showcases how different they are from one another, and the fact that they still need to live in the same world. And for me, obviously it is nice to hear that the movie that I enjoyed is winning an Oscar. But here I would make an analogy with Google. When you hear somebody saying that they're working in Google, this is probably a sign that they're kind of smart, they're earning a lot. It's a positive sign from a person of the industry. And for me, an Oscar and the fact that Anora won the Oscar is kind of like that. It's a confirmation that a movie that I liked is okay to the global standards, but again, I try not to orient my opinion because of this fact. So good, I think that's it. Enjoy Anora and finish, done. Okay.